Perhaps the Creator had you in mind for such a time as this. Did the boomers ruin everything? We live in very trying times, and it is hard to dismiss how past decisions made by older generations have created our current array of crises. But how bad are these crises? Many young people today carry a heavy sadness in their hearts. Many of them are paralyzed by anxiety and have abandoned all hope of getting married, having children, finding a fulfilling career, buying a home, or getting out of debt. In other words, they have given up on happiness. Some young people wish they had never been born at all, or perhaps born to another age. All of these thoughts remind me of one of my favorite scenes from The Lord of the Rings. Frodo says, "It's a pity Bilbo didn't kill Gollum when he had the chance." Gandalf responds, "Pity? It's pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. Many that live deserve death. Some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo?" Do not be too eager to deal out death and judgment. Even the very wise cannot see all ends. My heart tells me that Gollum has some part to play in it for good or for evil before this is all over. The pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many. Frodo then says, "I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened." Gandalf replies, "So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides that of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you were also meant to have it. And that is a very encouraging thought." That scene, of course, comes from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. It is important to note that Tolkien's generation faced some of the darkest moments in European history, and to reflect on how these events shaped that generation. For example, the two world wars had a profound impact on J.R.R. Tolkien and greatly influenced his thinking, which is evident in his literary works, particularly The Lord of the Rings. Here are some of the key ways in which the wars shaped his thinking. 1. The experience of war. Tolkien served as a soldier in World War I, and this experience exposed him to the horrors of trench warfare and the devastating effects of the conflict. The first-hand experience war likely contributed to his portrayal of the battles and conflicts of Middle-earth, emphasizing the cost of warfare and the heroism of ordinary individuals. 2. Loss and suffering. Both world wars brought immense loss and suffering to Tolkien's generation. He lost close friends in World War I, and the scale of destruction and the loss in World War II deeply affected him. These experiences are reflected in the themes of loss, sacrifice, and the impact of evil in his works. Themes of good versus evil. The world wars heightened Tolkien's sense of the struggle between good and evil, which is central to his storytelling. The dark forces of Sauron in The Lord of the Rings can be seen as reflections of the totalitarian regimes of the time, such as Nazi Germany. Environmental concerns. The world wars left parts of Europe uninhabitable due to heavy metals and other toxins left behind by years of trench warfare. The devastation of the natural world during the wars influenced Tolkien's deep love for nature and the environment. His descriptions of the Shire and other natural settings in Middle Earth reflect a desire for preservation and a yearning for simpler, unspoiled world. These themes are woven throughout his writings, making his work not only entertaining, but deeply reflective of the times in which he lived. When Bilbo says, "I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had ever happened," it reminds me of the Old Testament story of Esther. Here we read of another young person who wishes she did not have to face the realities of her time and place. She is both a princess and a prisoner. She has been named queen not to show her importance, but as a sign of the powerful men who control and exploit the women of her time. She wants to quit, run away, to never have been part of any of it. Perhaps she wishes she had never been born at all. But her unrivaled rank also placed her in a unique position to save her people from genocide. It is her uncle who tells her, "Perhaps you have been placed in the palace for such a time as this." Perhaps you are watching this video and you daydream of living in the past, perhaps in a simpler age. I challenge you to think very carefully about that fantasy. What past age are you thinking of? Are you thinking of a time when things were easier, less dangerous, and less uncertain? Our familiarity with modern medicine causes us to forget that for most of history, a case of strep throat, a broken bone, or an abscessed tooth could mean death or disability. Past ages were more violent and war was more common. And without modern forms of communication such as television, the internet, and radio, evil and violence could creep upon you and be at your doorstep without a moment's warning. Poverty was vastly more common and much more miserable and oppressed almost all of the people of this world, with almost the entire world living in a constant crisis of scarcity. Now, at this point, you may be arguing that the problems we face are without parallel in scope and number. When did another generation face global warming, threats from AI, and nuclear holocaust? Please let me remind you the future is always stranger than we think. I challenge you to write down your predictions of what the world will look like in 5 years. Write out your five most hopeful thoughts and your five most dreadful thoughts. If you do so, 5 years from now, you will discover that the world did not move in only one direction. Instead, it got progressively better and progressively worse, but probably not in any of the specific ways you predicted. When we think of the future, we often fall into two logical fallacies. One is to catastrophize the future, which means to imagine all the worst possible outcomes. The other is utopian thinking, in which we picture the world gradually becoming absolutely perfect in a flawless way. Neither is likely, and even the best futurist or historical analysis or historian will constantly fail to correctly forecast the future. Mark Twain once said, "I am an old man, and I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened." Instead, Tolkien, through the words of Gandalf, challenges us to ask, what is our purpose and role in this time and place? If we have some belief in God or providence, could it be that we were in the Creator's mind and in His intentions when He considered our age? Most of the people we admire most from history are people who had the courage to face the challenges of their day. From them, we are reminded that courage is the backbone of all morality, and that necessity is not only the mother of all inventions, but also the mother of all solutions. Let us be remembered someday by future generations for having had the determination to play an active role in the world's destiny rather than being a passive victim of our times. For perhaps we were born for such a time as this.